Welcome everyone to the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. This is a broadcast from the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Education Department, part of the Public Teachings in English. My name's Rick Crammond, and I'll be your host today, as always in these public teachings of the Plasma Reactor Group. And I've been doing this for about 6 years or so now in this format, and it's seen some changes over that time, as some might know. And we continue to have an interesting time investigating the plasma technology. What we call the plasma technology. Alrighty, maybe we'll just launch into see if anybody has something they'd like to present in the early part of the show here. Try to get things jump started. Is there anything that someone would like to show, or a topic to bring up, a question perhaps, or a video of your latest flying saucer in the garage, which I'm always hoping for. We've actually seen a couple in the past of spaceships being constructed. And I believe that we're not broadcasting to the Facebook from tonight. Sorry about that. You'll have to connect in YouTube or live stream or in the Zoom instead. I have some technical issue with broadcasting to the Facebook platform, apparently. Okay. Got some people to bring in here. Dean, I see your hand up there, and perhaps you'd like to go ahead with something that you wanted to say.
Rick, peace, I am present. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I never know. First of all, I want to thank you for your vigilance. And then I want to forgive me for it being so late at night that I have to go to sleep all the time at this time of the night. But the things that have been presented in the wishes, I am so present in them and hopeful, because I'm seeing the manifestation of those wishes coming to pass. And I don't understand how everything works, plasma and the rest of the stuff. Don't even understand the spirit and how it works. But I do see progress, and it thrills me. And in that, I am present. And with what Caroline shared today is just write down a wish every day of what you would like to see happen, sort of like the prayer list. And then just see it coming into pass. And my wish every day is that I can see peace for myself in my heart, because if I feel it there, it has been exploded as a flower blooms throughout the world. Anyway, don't have much to say, but I would love to give all of myself into everybody who is listening in grace, mercy, peace, beauty, creation. Anyway, with that, I am present. And thanks, Rick.
Well, thank you, Dean. That's very nice. Yes, we had a good conversation in the One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace. Actually, earlier today for me, or yesterday for some people in European time. And one of the things that came up was the idea of creating toys for kids that are based on the ideas of the plasma technology. And that was interesting, and I thought it might be a good exercise in this group to try to recall some of the demonstrations that people have done during the past years here. The simple demonstrations that a child could easily understand, if not just duplicate themselves with very little supplies or very little investment in time, money, or energy in order to get to the point of actually using these toys, or call them maybe tools for understanding the plasma technology. So there's a couple things that came to mind. There was the toroid, which we've toyed with, so to speak, in the last 2 or 3 plasma groups here and previously. And that's a great toy. I've shown various uses for that, how it can represent an atom, it can represent a galaxy, and it represents how the fields interact, and all kinds of things can be derived from that one simple toy that can be bought at a dollar store for $2 or $3. There's very few. It's hard to find something that would show so many aspects of the way the fields operate out of one simple little toy. But there's others. There's actually quite a few things, like the magnets are another great example, the ring magnets in particular, and that was shown in the first kids Knowledge Seekers workshops, the interaction of the ring magnets in particular. And Mr. Keshe was demonstrating that and showing the difference between when they're flat on a table interacting and when you have one above the other one, when it's on its edge on the table rather than flat on the table. And then it can interact and dance, and they both are in communication very well. So he was showing that as an example. There's probably at least a dozen concepts that could be demonstrated with magnets, I think. Different ways they could interact and show positioning and show the interaction of multiple magnets and how one influences all the other ones and so on and so forth. There's quite a bit that can be done with magnets. So we got the torus, we've got magnets. Actually, I think I'll start a list and we'll see what we can come up with.
Rick, can I share a screen?
Yeah.
I own the work, so it, you know, I have no copyright on it. But when I look at, let's see, okay, let's see if I can actually, pushing okay.
I'll stop the share. It might make it easier for him.
Oh, okay. There we go. I wish this would be easier. Okay, that's not going to work for me. Okay, this is not going to work. I'm going to try this again. So take me off of photo share, okay?
Photo share, I don't have you on photo share.
Yeah, okay, well, just take me off of the screen.
Yeah, I don't think you're...
We don't see you on the screen, Dean.
Okay, very good.
But however,
very good. I'm going to try. I'm trying to get the stuff that I'd like to share because the artwork is so tied into how plasma and the fields interact, and I caught it in form. At least I think. You know, I mean, we all get to hallucinate, I guess. That was something who would, I don't remember what his name was. He said that. Okay, let me get back here. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to see if I can just share. But I'm going to get into my stuff and see if I can do it.
Yep, if you can find the picture and line it up first and then do the sharing, then that's the best way. Okay, let me know when you're ready, Dean. I'm going to start sharing the something here, because otherwise we don't have...
Well, yeah, keep on.
Yeah, no problem. I can interrupt what I'm doing anytime. I'm just starting a list here. And just a random list to do some brainstorming here, basically. Figure out what have we already, what do we already have? What have we already done and looked at? So we have the torus, and that's, do lots with that. And we've got the magnets. The ring magnets in particular.
Don't forget your electrostatic polystyrene balls in the plastic box, Rick, please.
Thank you, Doug. I'm going to...
Rick, that was really fun this morning. By the way, if you could stop sharing for just a minute, and I'm going to see if I can get into the stuff that I would like to show you.
Okay, that sounds good. Just give me 1 second here while I'm on a bit of a run here. I just need to get this written down. And then there's the, what do we call it? Static, just as a reminder. Okay, I'll stop the sharing and go ahead, Dean.
I'm going to see if it's going to work. Okay, I'm going to go to photos. I think it's going to be in photos. Drive. Nope, that's not it. Oh, that's not it. Okay. I always have so much trouble with this.
Well, you have to get the thing you want to share up first, not search for
Well,
it.
I
in the
did,
share.
but then I have, when I pull it up, it has documents, Google Drive, all of these different things.
Mhm. You should see the window that's open already with your thing in it there.
Here we go. I think I got it. I think I got it. Nope, it doesn't do it for me. Nope, it doesn't.
What comes up in the share window? Do you have your
Well,
image?
I have all sorts of pictures right from my phone and my album, but the things that I pulled out of the actual album on this thing, on my, got gorgeous pictures I could show you, but not what I want to show you. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this tonight. But Rick, I'm going to actually send you some of the stuff.
You could do it that way. That's one way. Or you should be able to, if you can see it on your screen, like see the picture and have it up on your screen, you should be able to share that.
Well, I can't get into the albums that I have set aside in Google Photos. And
Right,
I have it on my screen right now, but I don't know how to access it. Technology.
We're seeing an image of a sort of picture on Vimeo, but not on Zoom.
That's just
Are you seeing some? Are you seeing things now?
That's just his screenshot, John, his icon.
Okay. Well, tonight, my friends, on my toys and images, we're just going to have to, no, I'm going to have to just say I'm present, and it's my wish that it comes next week.
Or you can send me a folder with, you know, half a dozen or a dozen pictures or whatever. It wouldn't take too long to come through if you want.
Okay, I can see if I can do that.
In Zoom or Telegram or some other way that you can imagine.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can do that, and I'm fading fast. It's late for me. They're working hard.
We've got a cutoff zone here, I realize, yeah. Okay, we'll see what you can do there. In the meantime, I'm going to put my plasma tools for learning.
Thanks for everybody, and thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And let's see.
But Dean, you're in England, aren't you?
No, I'm in California. We're on fire.
Yeah, the whole.
Fine. I thought you were over in GB.
It's on fire.
Literally, it's crazy here.
Yeah. Dean, which part of California are you in?
Well, I'm in the Central Valley. Sun-made raisins we're famous for. We're in the San Joaquin Valley, right in the center of the valley. Agriculture.
Right, Central Valley. I'm in Southern California, Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
You got your share of fires in that area. They both have.
Now, this is who? Because I know you.
Ike. This is Ike.
Ike.
Yes. Ike Bullet.
Okay. Well,
if
you need a place to stay, come. I have an extra room.
You got Stella there, and you got Peggy there also.
Well, we're in, where if we don't have major earthquakes or something, for fires, we're pretty safe, but California is crazy right now. It's almost scary.
What place isn't?
You're probably right. I think we're
We're at the boiling point.
Yeah, living in California, I feel like we really are in a very, very hot war. I don't know what's really happening. I have my desires, and that's where I try to sit with what we have put into intention a long time ago, right? The peace treaty, I've been part of it. And so my spirit, my soul, and everything is there. And right now, my God, and I don't know who my God would be, but it's pretty crazy living in California right now. All the directions and all the losses. And I've known some of these losses. Anyway, that's too much. My desire, I'm just going to stick with my desires and what Carolyn talked about this morning, which was just writing out your wishes every day for what you want to see happen. Because I think that's probably the greatest, maybe, force we have right now. Spiritually, I'd take it back maybe to the Tao or the ether, that was Tesla. And anyway, I don't know. I know I'm here. I know my desires. I know my heart, and I know my wishes. And I wish for peace. And that is my desire. And I'm present in that. And since I can't get my images up here, I guess next week will be the toys section. And with that, I'm going to say peace. Just peace. And grace on top of that.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Look forward to your pictures later then. All right, let's go focus back on this idea here, the plasma tools and toys for learning, I call it. We've got 4 so far. I'd like to come up with a dozen would be nice. Anybody remember some of the other things we played with? I remember something that's interesting that's kids could learn from too is the crystal radio detector. I mentioned this in the One Nation group yesterday as well. A little crystal radio detector that does everything. I've shown in this group quite a few times actually.
Is that the brainwave device, Rick? That it's got the little antenna.
There's a couple of devices. Brain power, it's called actually. Came from brain power. Maybe I'll just start my video quickly here. Might be good to actually have a look while we're talking about these things. Okay. Okay, just get the screen arranged here.
What type of diodes do you use on your crystal radio? Selenium or the ordinary new ones?
Germanium,
The
actually.
germanium, yeah.
Germanium 1N, the 1N34A germanium diode is very popular for crystal radio sets, and there's good reason for it. So this is one of the original, this is the original one that I bought, which was from Brain Power. It's BRANE-POWER. Brain meaning the membranes between parallel worlds, not brain, although it is associated. And this little unit, it didn't come with an adjusting knob or a little tail on it here. I added those against the wishes of the high-tech shaman that put this together, but he liked it after I dealt with it. So it's got some parts inside, kind of a messy looking, but it's soldered little parts and so on. And right here, I don't know if you can see really properly, but I'll try to sort of make the light on there. Right on the end of my finger, on my fingernail, you could say, there's a little green and red sort of spot and a clear glass thing.
Yeah, that's a
wire.
diode, yeah.
That's a diode. That's the 1N34A diode. That's the thing that makes the whole thing work. And a diode allows a one-way flow of electricity, of electrons, basically, and it won't allow it back the other way. So what it does basically is rectify a sine wave into a
half wave, yeah.
From alternating current to direct current is what it does, and that way it's able to actuate earphones or whatever sound mechanism you have hooked up to it. So basically, a crystal radio has a diode, a capacitor, and a resistor, and a coil. It's also got this little, it's called a ferrite coil here, and that's the tuner coil. It's tuned to AM range.
The old models used to have a bigger coil with no nucleus to it.
Yep, there's many designs for coils for crystal radios. Some of them are quite elaborate, and some of them are quite tiny. And this is the adjusting knob for the variable capacitor inside. And this just hooks up to what normally in a crystal radio, this would hook up to your earphones. And a crystal radio in the purest sense requires no electricity to make it work, which is pretty amazing. You hook up to an antenna and a ground wire and plug in these little funky earphones that you have to get special earphones that wouldn't work with these ones. And you could tune in to local radio stations and whatnot, different things. But the purpose for this radio has never been to tune into radio stations. In fact, I always tune beside radio stations because to me, the radio stations are the noise that interferes with the signals that I'm trying to go after, which are the subtle things in between radio stations. And there's stuff you can hear in the atmosphere or in the environment or right next to it. It turns out that little diode is so sensitive because it's clear, it's actually sensitive to light as well. So when this is all hooked up and finely tuned with the software and the computer and all that, I can shine a light on this, like this light that's right here, this funky desk lamp, and you can hear the hum from it, that's absorbed by the diode, and it responds to that visible light spectrum. But it also responds to, I've got a laser RPM counter things. I can stand way at the other side of the building here and shine it onto this while it's sitting on the desk and get a really sharp response out of it. So it's good for laser light, visible light. It also responds somewhat to ultraviolet and infrared signals. It's also responsive to magnetic. So if you have a magnet and move it quickly back and forth, it'll sense the magnet and you'll hear a sound come out of it from that. It's sensitive to electric motors, electronic devices. I've even put this little thing up in front of the computer screen, and at one point I could read the whole computer. All the innards of the computer were talking through this. You could hear the different sections of the computer that were communicating back and forth and whatnot. And it would even read the screen. I could hold it up and I could move different colored images behind it, and it could tell me what the colors were by the response of the sound. Black was different than red, was different than white, and so on and so forth. And I even did a movie with a screensaver in the background, and the radio actually responded to the screensaver with an audio track for the screensaver, which was one of these going through a wormhole kind of screensaver that's normally silent, just for the background. And so there's all kinds of stuff that this can do. It can sense all sorts of fields. I've used it to sense the fields of a plasma ball, for example, and you can tell there's a series. There's not just a gradient, but there's a series of very distinct cutoff points with a plasma ball radiation up to a couple of meters or more away. And it's very interesting to kind of map that out. And you can use this just like a sensor, and it's almost like a Geiger counter.
Rick?
Yeah.
I'm going, wow, wow, wow. You're saying the little crystal diode radio is picking up all of these different things?
And way more. Yeah, and more.
Wow, I had one when I was a child in North Dakota. Cold country.
If you were to look up, actually, what I'll show you is, let me see, where is it? I'll find it first here. Hang on a second. This is a 10-year.
I just want to once again thank you, because you've been an anchor to this whole thing. And anyway, thanks.
Yes, well, we talked about that a little bit in the One Nation group as well. And I started talking a little bit about the past because I want to try to inspire people to get out there and expose yourself to the world of the internet and kind of make a name for yourself in a way.
I don't want a name for myself, but if I had something that I knew.
This is exactly what I brought up, Dean, is that I didn't want a name for myself. It wasn't like I wanted to go out and, I want to become really popular or anything like that. And like I said in the group, I like to keep to myself. I don't like to get exposed out into the public and so on. But I found myself in a position where I just wasn't willing to take it anymore. I wanted to let people know what was going on and some truth about the Tesla thing. And I wanted to tell people about Tesla's flying machine, electric flying machine, which nobody even knows about. And in order to get the Tesla name, I wanted to make the Tesla name a household name so that we would eliminate fossil fuel consumption and burning on this planet. I wanted to make that my mission so that the essences of this planet could breathe, because there's a saying that breath is essence. and they're taking our breath away by having the burning of fuels. And that is not okay with my essence. And I decided that it was time to take out the oil companies. David and Goliath, here we come. And I figured, if not now, when? And if not me, who? And I say the other way around. If not me, who? And if not now, when? And with those
and they're
two little
working on
sayings,
taking you out.
well, it's you got to take into consideration when you make a wish from the very deep essence of your being, there's nothing that can take it out. You are literally invincible, because from your essence point of view, it doesn't even matter if you die in trying to accomplish whatever that essence wish is, because it is so deep that it goes beyond the physicality, beyond your ego. And if you get exposed to the internet, it'll bruise your ego so hard and so fast that you won't be able to keep up unless you just let it go. And people want to call you crazy Mr. Fix-It Rick, which is what I got called from one of the top tech blog guys at one point. And I was insulted at first, and I thought, geez, it's ruining my reputation, and I don't want to be known as crazy and all of this. But yet it helped me get views on this one video, which was admittedly totally crazy. I had a turbine rotating at about 10,000 RPM with a skill saw blade on it. The whole rig was made out of plastic and held together with crazy glue and magnets. And the blade wasn't even attached, it was just magnetically attached. But somehow the whole thing was all powered by 125 psi air pressure, and it took off, and I couldn't stop it because the compressor couldn't be shut down. And it was really crazy, with me screaming and my friend in the background, and me really scared to cross the path of this blade that's whipping around. I lived to tell the tale, and got called crazy for it. And it started a whole controversy, but it also started my first sort of viral videos, and it got things going, and decided, oh, what the heck? I don't care anymore. As long as I get that Tesla name out there, I don't care what I have to do to make that a household name. And I figured that would be enough of a rebellious act in a way. It would cause a revolution in a way, because that name Tesla, it's loaded. It's people find out about Tesla and Edison, and they find out the battle that happened in the early days, and the electric wars, they called it, and so on, and how
it really was.
Yeah, there was a lot going on with Tesla
material
and
wars.
his life. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just electricity, it was materials. Cannabis.
Well, yeah. Well, for example, Nikola Tesla had this nice little turbine that he introduced on his 50th birthday, and he was so proud of it, and he was totally convinced it was going to replace all of the heat engines, what he calls heat engines, which are the oil burning combustion type engines that were being developed at that time. He said it was to replace all of the heat engines of the world. And that didn't come to pass, obviously. But we could have had a Model T powered by this really nice little bladeless disc turbine. And had the money been put into that instead of all the other nonsense that we got into in the last 100 years, or into electric, because Tesla could easily have built a beautiful electric based machines. And he indeed did that at one point, had a fuelless electric vehicle that was self-powered by one little 12-volt battery. You could drive all day and it up to 80 miles an hour, no problem, and so on. Showed it to a reporter at the time, and I think it was the 1930s. And the reporter said, well, we already have gasoline vehicles and everybody's, happy with that. Why would you want to bring electric vehicles out again? We were already done with that. We had those already, because they had electric vehicles before they had the gasoline vehicles. And in fact, it was an electric vehicle that set the world speed record at that time, 120 miles an hour or something like that. And just, anyway, it's and now see the whole new revolution has happened. What do we have? Not due to my actions necessarily. My actions helped bring the Tesla name in at one point because I had more hits for the name Tesla than anybody else at one point on the internet. But more importantly, the Tesla car company got born, and I found that became the household name. That's how the Tesla name became a household name. Now everybody knows about Tesla electric cars, or knows someone that has one, or sees them on the road and has heard about them. The new Tesla.
Yeah, but they don't have any idea of Tesla. I listen to people
quite
talk
often.
and
That's true. I just met the new barista at the place, the coffee shop I go to the other day, and her name is Tesla. Okay, I went, what? Your name is Tesla? And yes, and she says, I was named after the band. I went, oh, the band.
how many times can we get removed?
All right, so she was named after the band Tesla. And she knew a little bit about Nikola Tesla, you know, and I asked her what was Tesla's most famous invention, and she said the Tesla coil, and well, it's close, but it's actually, or his favorite invention actually. His favorite invention was actually his turbine. He thought that was the greatest of all of his inventions. But anyways, and that's because he had a special purpose for it. It was for his flying machine. That was the motive power for his flying machine, in order to run the generators for the electric fields for his flying machine, which had no wings, no ailerons, no flaps, and no airbags. It was a solid structure, and so on and so forth. There's a whole write-up. Let me get my Instructable lined up here. I got to just locate it here.
You know what? It's really like probably where you're at too. I don't know how you do what you do. How do you're up all hours of the night and day. Do you ever sleep?
Well, I do. Sometimes I crash hard. Yeah, it's pretty insane. I was really tired before I began today's workshop. I had a long day and it was exhausting and so on and so forth. But, you know, I'm on a mission, and if you get yourself on a mission and you got a grand plan, and it's kind of drives you basically. It's not it's gone beyond a personal thing. I've taken on a you know, just a bigger picture, you might say, and I'm willing to engage on that and just go for it, and however it comes out. And it's really an amazing journey, that's for sure.
Well, my friend Rick, I really do have to go to bed, but I appreciate you, Commander, so much. And you will see, you know, just my artwork. Agriculture is one thing, right? That feeds people, but art, it feeds the soul.
Well, that's right. And that's why I took on this project, which I'm going to show here right now. And it's very appropriate for this time of year, which is Halloween time. And it was 10 years ago, a couple of days ago, 10-year anniversary of this little project called the Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio.
That's fun stuff.
So I wanted to get the name Tesla in there, and I was also entering it into the Instructables.com. Instructables I highly recommend to people. It would be good to actually get some some good instructables on GANs in there. But it's the greatest the biggest how-to site on the internet. So they've been at it for over 10 years now. And I'm one of the stars, you might say, or used to be. I haven't put one in for a while, but I've got many instructables in this site. This is one of them, the Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio. And there's the little radio that I came up with. I've got a couple of them here as well. It's a crystal radio in a jam jar, essentially. And I make little antennas for it and hook it up to the computer through special sound software that's able to convert the signals into audio sounds. So I do a little write-up here and different links and so on with it, about the circuit, about the diode, and about the software that I use, the Audio Hijack Pro. And I mentioned here, in the following movies, I show how the Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio reacts to lightning, radio frequencies, the light spectrum, the computer screen, radio frequency pulses, electromagnetic fields, and more. And
now, Rick, a diode that restricts the way I think you said, what does a diode do? Just let me tell you.
Diode's like a one-way valve, essentially.
Okay.
So you can look at it that way. It allows the flow to go one way. So if you have an alternating current going through, then it'll block part of it, but it'll allow part of it to flow. So in that case, you can get a pulsating direct current, which would be able to activate earphones and give you an actual signal that you can hear out of the original signal that's coming in as a electromagnetic wave, basically. As far as that.
And that would have always worked, right? I mean, didn't have to have any man-made signal going through to receive that.
That's right. Well, you can imagine Nikola Tesla, who was basically the first crystal radio buff in a way. People were, he actually had a large receiver with large coils and a special, instead of a 1N34A diode, he had a special nickel oxide kind of, well, there's a name for it, I forget what it's called now, but it acts like a diode, allows that one-way flow. And you shake it up and then you reset it, and it allows you to do your work for a while. And he would listen to whatever he could pick up, and it turns out that lightning is what gets picked up. So good old Nikola Tesla would spend his nights listening to lightning, and he loved to do that. He would actually name the sounds he was hearing, the lightning. He could hear a storm, he said, for up to 1,000 miles away. He would start listening to it. You could hear
I remember hearing all this. I just didn't understand how the diode worked.
Well, the diode just allows that signal to come through into a different part of the circuit, and it turns an alternating electromagnetic signal into a more of a DC or a broken DC audio signal. And you convert that through the coil, and you can convert the one higher frequency to a lower audio frequency, and bingo, you can actually hear sounds. And so,
you know what? It's really late here for me as well with you. And with this, I'm going to say, I am present with peace today for our universe. And with that, I'm going to say, anybody go? I'm present with that. And then I'll go to bed.
All right, Dean. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you present?
I am present.
All right.
So I'm just going through and showing some of the parts of this Instructable where I show how to make the different antennas. This is interesting as well, the football antenna, which is, if you look it up, Nikola Tesla actually made a football-shaped antenna very similar to this with a heavy wire around it and two end wires that went into it and so on. And the rumor is it through those that came after Tesla is that he left this in with the instructions that it was very special, had anti-gravity qualities to it. So I thought that was interesting. I think that if you look up Otis Carr and the what is it called, OTC something, it's a craft that was built by Otis Carr, who followed Nikola Tesla and so on. And Ralph Ring also was involved with that, and the Utron devices that were part of that craft looked like this same structure with the two cones and bottom to bottom cones were part of the rotating cones like that were part of the Utron power supply. I think John Bliven knows a bunch about that. And so it's can be used as an AM radio, of course. That's what the AM radio circuit was originally designed for, once they started to actually have radios to actually listen to. But I could actually detect a lightning storm coming in, and it was quite amazing to tune the radio to hear the lightning as thunder, and I could hear it. I had the radio, the software adjusted to actually hear it like thunder. I could hear the lightning like thunder before I could even hear it as thunder locally, because the light travels faster and I could hear it electronically before I could hear the actual audio rumble. So it's interesting how that works. And see, you can hear what I call disembodied spirit voices, and that's a weird effect. If you tune between the radio stations, sometimes you get odd voices coming through. Maybe they're from other radio stations, maybe it's just stuff that's out there that sounds like voices, but maybe it isn't, and it's just interference of some sort. Or maybe it really is disembodied spirit voices who hang out in between the frequencies, basically, and the side bands of the frequencies. It's certainly interesting. You can, if you allow yourself to get in sort of a Halloween mood with that, then you can definitely start hearing strange voices with this kind of machinery. I don't want to take it too seriously because it gets too freaky. But you can make sound with light. I used a candle at one point. I show that in one of the videos that's available in this Instructable. So you move the candle back and forth, or the unit in front of the candle back and forth, and that movement of light on the diode creates a sound. If you hold it just steady, either a laser or the light from the candle just steady on the diode, you won't hear anything. But if you move it, then the movement of the fields is what gets registered by the radio. So it's interesting that way. You can create really strange and weird music by different feedback and resonance effects and so on. Just holding it in front of a computer can give you some very strange sounds, and you can alter the software and so on. There's a video that I have there, but I think I've shown that before. I don't know if we need to get into that. I call it a wormhole transporter. Spirit radio is a wormhole transporter, and that was kind of fun. This is another effect step, spooky effect number 5, Van Eck freaking. It's called. That's an actual term, Van Eck freaking. That's when you can use a device to, like for example, use a device in one side of a wall and tell what's going on the other side of the wall. And in this case, the device is used to, the Wikipedia says Van Eck freaking is the process of eavesdropping on the contents of a CRT and LCD display by detecting its electromagnetic emissions. So in other words, they have equipment that can eavesdrop on your, people are going to freak out over this, eavesdrop on your computer monitor from another room and tell what is basically going on it, if not the complete details. So I was doing that with the simple crystal radio. When it taught me how it could do that, I was pretty freaked out. I was doing the freaking in that case, because I couldn't believe this crystal radio could discern between blue and yellow and white and black and green blocks on the screen. It didn't make sense to me. How could it do that? But it turns out that each color on the computer screen is activated in the background by different frequencies of the diode, of the light emitting diodes and so on in there. The electromagnetic fields coming off, and that's what produces different sounds in the little radio. So it's quite amazing, quite amazing. Maybe maybe you can show a quick view of that while we're on the topic here. Let me get that set up here. How do I get that? Okay, I'll share it as a video, and we'll have a look at part of this. Maybe 5 minutes might be a bit much. Don't want to overwhelm anybody here. I don't want to bore you either. Let me see here. Okay, I just have to check and see. I'm not sure if I have music on here. I think it's just my own sounds from the radio, actually. So we should be good there. Okay, here we go. See if it works. So this is called Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio Wormhole Voyage number 1 from October 24th, 2009. So 10 years ago, a week ago today. Just set it up a little bit better here. Bear with me a second. And it's 5 minutes. Maybe I'll let it play through and just let it be. It's part of my 10-year anniversary, you could say. So I'm celebrating. Okay, here we go. So just to remind you, the little radio is in front of the computer screen with a screensaver playing on the computer screen. There's no sound from the screensaver, but the little radio is making up the sound according to what it senses on the computer screen. If you can kind of follow that.
Christmas.
Whoops, I don't know what that was. Anyway, so that was the video, and it was kind of fun at the time. And back to my Instructable briefly here, and I'll just show you where you can access it if you like to. I'll show you where you can access it if you like to build such a device. Okay, I'll just continue going through here. So we looked at the Van Neck freaking spooky effect number 6, make fright with a mic. I actually spoke into the radio, even though there's no microphone, there's no input for sound as such. And by kind of speaking quite hard onto the side of the radio, I could record my voice in the unit. So it actually picks up on sound waves, as well as light waves, as well as magnetic rays, electromagnetic rays, and other laser, and you name it. Then I put the unit next to my modem, and that was quite interesting. You could hear the modem kicking in, and it sounds like a woodpecker, kind of a kind of thing, a regular knocking kind of sound. And I realized that modem was putting out probably some harmful rays, and it made me realize I could actually map it out. You could see how the fields emitted from the modem up to about 2 meters away would indicate quite strongly on the radio. I showed the screensaver, and that's spooky effect number 8, bring a screensaver to life. And I think that's the last one that I showed here. And there's some other details and some other links and whatnot. And there's a bunch of people, 13 people who made this project and posted their pictures of their various incarnations of this project. And it's pretty good. I ended up doing pretty good with this in the contest. It was featured, and it's been hit in Instructables 687,719 times. So that's pretty good for an Instructable. And okay, so I'll put the website address on that so people can check into it. And if you, like I say, if you want a really interesting field detector, especially for Halloween, you could put it together fairly quickly if you had the diode and a few other parts, which aren't that easy to obtain nowadays because the crystal radio business, people aren't so much into them as they used to be many years ago, of course. And I'll post it in the other groups here as well. So it's at instructables.com, Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio. Hello? I heard a voice.
Rick, what about bringing it up to date with nano-coating the coils? Have you thought about that?
Yes, exactly. I was going to actually mention that because that's what I should have done for tonight. It would have been nice. I wanted to upgrade for the 10-year anniversary to make the Spooky Tesla Spirit Radio 2, or Spooky, the sequel, something like that, and actually enter it into the contest here in Instructables and see if I can win again. That'd be kind of nice. So yeah, that's a great idea. Nano-coated coils, other there's other, you know, you could put wires directly into a GANs box, for example, and use that as an antenna. And especially if it was a salty environment, it would tend to act as an antenna. In fact, that's what the Navy does for an antenna. Is they just take a hose, squirt salt water out of it, and hook a wire up to it, and that's water that's squirting out of a hose that they pump while they're out at sea can act as an antenna for broadcasting or for receiving. So that's a pretty bizarre idea. It's that a stream of salt water can act as an antenna. And then we think, well, our bodies are salt water. Yeah, it's true. We are actually really good radiation absorbers, the human body. As you play around with these fields, you start to realize that the body absorbs these fields and sometimes retransmits those fields. It acts as an antenna to amplify the fields. You can understand that just by putting your fingers on an AM radio antenna when it's playing, and you'll make the sound much louder by touching the antenna, because our bodies act as an amplifier to the antenna. It extends the range of that antenna. So yeah, there's definitely room. I even thought of just pouring caustic into the jar and nano-coating the entire circuitry. It'll probably destroy a bunch of things, but maybe it would end up being a true crystal in there. We'd have a caustic crystal, and you know, it's got copper in there. There's a little bit of lead from the solder, so that might not be so good. There's lead-free solder as well these days, so that can be non-toxic. And just see what happens. Never mind the antenna, but the entire circuit could be perhaps in effect nano-coated. So there's still lots to learn with this device. What about, you know, hooking it up? I have hooked it up to a maggrav, and you can hear the fields from the maggrav, which is quite interesting, and sense the fields from up to a meter or so, or a couple of meters away, depending. And also it'll sense the fields of a rotating reactor, GANs reactor, like you see, let me show my video briefly here. You know, like one of these guys that I have caged up here, my toroid cage. When these are spinning and you have the little radio, this one or the other crystal radio that I made, when it's up next to it, you can hear these. They put out each one, depending on what's in it, puts out a particular tone. You could have 3 different Ganses all at the same speed and the same amounts in there. But if they're different Ganses, they'll have a different signal. Excuse me. The signal that's picked up by the little radio. And the signal increases with intensity and frequency the faster the little reactor spins. And it gets a lot more signal from the center part than it does from each side. And the signal can change if you put your finger on it, or otherwise mess with the charge that's part of the, I think the rotating charge has something to to do with it. I'm not really clear. At first I thought it might have been the little O-ring in there. Maybe it's got carbon in the, you see the little black O-ring that's in between the two halves that screw together this. I thought maybe that was putting out a signal, but it wasn't that. There was no, these bearings that are on here, I put these on after that normally you see in the background over there. Put the light on. These little guys here, they don't have, they have the motor down below. But when I put the radio, strangely enough, I put the radio next to the motor and it hardly made any sound. Like if I was to go like this with it really close, it would hardly make any sound from the motor. But up here, next to the middle part of the reactor, that's where the maximum sound seemed to come from. It's very odd, I thought. But that's also where the rings of the GANs would be situated as well, the so-called GANs rings that form on the sides of the rotating sphere. So there's definitely room for some experimentation along those lines as well for sensing the fields of these reactors, rotating reactors. It's a lot of fun playing around with that. And I've used different sensors as well, not just the crystal radio, but also nano-coated coils with GANs and test tubes with GANs in them and coils and that sort of thing, and just hook them up to an audio input. Basically, it's quite, anybody can do it. It's you take do I have one here handy? Hang on a sec. I think I have something there I can demonstrate with. Really tucked away somewhere. I can't. Oh, here we go.
Rick and everybody else, Mr. Keshe is saying, no, like Alex Bees. Like Alex Bees, you can making diode, transistors, capacitors, resistance, like in a physical way. When you see the not gradient, because I know it's not like it when I say gradient, like a capacitor.
Hello, like a capacitor.
It's a capacitor. It's in the middle of the wire.
Sorry, there's a lot of noise there, Dan. Say again.
Okay.
Like a capacitor.
I wait because it's I'm working. It's I similitude of
symmetry. Something about symmetry.
asymmetric.
Sorry, you can't hear me, Dan. It's really breaking up, Ben.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
It's not possible because I have the noise in background.
Okay. Well, you can try later if you get a break there. This is one little device that I came up with. So it's essentially a nano-coated coil inside a test tube, the cork, and the cork has at the top a plug for audio. So in other words, you can plug this into a computer audio inlet and use this as a sensor to sense different fields and whatnot. And I've got there's two wires going into it. There's one for the ground post and one for the this one I actually have, I don't know if you can see in there, there's actually a diode in there. the 1 in 34A diode is actually put in as part of this circuit. So it's sort of a crystal radio in a way, but it's just a sensor circuit. And that was kind of fun to play with. Didn't get any profound results from it, but there might be ways with certain variables, certain conditions, like adding different ganses to the test tube, for example, could change the range of the function, the range of the pickup of such a device. It might be very specific in the way it operates. It might be a way to pick up plasmatic fields as opposed to electric or electromagnetic fields. So that would be a great avenue to explore. I'd love to take a couple of weeks off and just play around with different devices like that, with sensing different fields and so on. That would be a good one for someone that's would like to do that kind of work, that experimental work with fields and sensors and so on. When we were watching that wormhole movie, I was reminded that, like, what if you were really in space and whipping through stars or going by, you're just going at multiple times light speed, and you're at warp speed or whatever, zipping through. And how would you be able to process such a how would you be able to process the fields that you're going through? In other words, you need instant feedback of what's happening right here, right now, in the immediate conditions of your environment. You don't need to know what it was like, say 100,000 kilometers ago or 100,000 light years ago, depending on how fast you're going, because that's in the past. That's already gone. Those fields are way back there somewhere. It might be good to analyze them for a future time to return, but even then they could be all different by the time you get back. So the fields that are important are the ones that are right in front of your face, and possibly the ones in the future. But the future you can't predict either, because maybe it's so dynamic of an environment that you can't project that far into the future. It's just not possible to project that far. So in other words, you got what's right in front of you. So what is a great way to visualize or otherwise make it so we can sense those kinds of fields? Well, audio is pretty good in a way, because it's quite direct. You get, you could see going through that whirlpool video, it had its points where you could hear the incoming blobs of light as they come in, vroom, 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 and you could hear them actually whoosh by like they were, solid entities. And they say there's no sound in space, but this is creating sound from something that's incoming. So in other words, if you're going through these field strength, differentials in field strength, and you need to know approximately what is the field strength going on here, instead of looking at a meter or some other device that's a visual kind of indicator, maybe a light difference. We have our yellow alert, red alert kind of systems, so you could sort of go with that. But audio really works well, because you can hear the fields, you can hear the interaction, sort of almost like the scraping of the fields against the spaceship in a way. You can hear the incoming field, so you know approximately what you're dealing with in the terms of the field strength. And maybe that's a way that we can sense the fields that we're going through as as voyagers in space. Perhaps we have the built-in apparatus already to do that, because, as I mentioned, we are, as human beings, basically advanced crystal radio setups. And if we just learn that we have all the hardware, all we have to do is alter our own internal software, and we can fine tune our receiver and transmitter parts of ourselves in order to engage in these fields that we speak of, and other other means of communication, direct communication, for example. Any questions at this point? I've kind of digressed from the kids' toy thing, but I wanted to put down this radio as one of the tools and toys for learning about plasma, because I think it's fun that people may say it's matter state and you're just measuring this or that. Well, I say, try it. Try it and really dive into it and see if you can say that it's only simply matter state. I've had a few things happen that has just blown me away. I don't have a reason why some things happened, and I'm still kind of freaked out about them. At one point, I was playing with the radio up against the screen with a YouTube video running in the background. And the radio actually made the YouTube video go into slow motion. You can't, at that point, back then, you couldn't even make a YouTube video go into slow motion. So I'm not sure how that happened, but it was very strange to see this YouTube video where the person started drawing their words out and drawing them out and in slow-mo. Couldn't believe it, and it kind of freaked me out. I thought I was going a bit too far at that point. I think there was a rational explanation, and the way my hard drive was being overwhelmed by the audio and video work that was going on, perhaps, and it slowed everything down. I don't know. You can always rationalize these strange coincidences. I think sometimes it's better to just smile and let it go. Okay, any other comments or questions? Anybody like to bring something up? Can anybody remind me of any other teaching toys that we've played with over the years?
Yesterday, if you are so good to remember with electrostatic balls, no? You have 3 layers. The balls, your hand influence the top layer, and the middle is reposition. No, in the bottom box with plastics, it's it's first layer. The second layer it's how to say, it's a ball of aluminium or styrofoam, and in top you have the glass, plexiglass. You influence one layer, you make a reposition the middle layer. Everything is when you Caroline laughing and Peggy. No, Peggy, Libby or Peggy. It's not important. It's the same principle, how you influence and create the environment. No? Thinking like a skin, 3 layer of skin. And about this analogy of Tesla, no, when you have the capacitor like the capacitor asymmetric, when you have the coil, the no gradient, the magnetical and gravitational coil, you create the flow. You're thinking like a diode in this manner. It's so much. I have a lot of noise, perhaps.
We hear you quite
when
well, Dan. We hear you
Okay.
pretty good. We don't hear much of the background noise. It's pretty good.
Okay, because I think, you know, in this day, I think, and it's ring a bell when I see this video, but the similitude of creation of desire or wish, or how I influence this world is the same thing. How do your hand influence this balls preposition?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Very,
when you're
very
making
much
one
so. Much
decision.
so. We make the wish and then it's done. It's all done in an instant, basically, the wish, but the effects keep going. The positioning keeps going for some time after. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's perfect how you are saying. This concept, it's remind me because it's ring a bell when I see this, and I'm making this similitude with a layer of skin and influence the environment, like herpes or virus or processing or everything. It's the same, but the other angle seeing. It's understanding the concept.
Yeah. So if we can teach kids some of these, call them universal concepts, things that apply, whether they're playing marbles or they're thinking about atoms or thinking about galaxies, it's the same principles involved in how things are created, how things are formed, how they interact with each other, and all of that. As Mr. Keshe is so good at describing, he can describe several dimensions at the same time because he can get to that root core principle that's involved and knows how to describe that in multiple ways. So he can take a fruit or a vegetable, and the cross section of that will, show us the interaction of the fields through the skin or through the different layers that are found in a fruit or vegetable, and that can be the same as in a galaxy or the same as in an atom. And he's great at showing that. And again, I highly recommend the kids knowledge seekers workshops for actual live demonstrations of that, and many examples by Mr. Keshe of that concept of taking a simple idea and projecting it in a bigger sense.
What is applied like a skin in the physicality, it's applied in the nano layering or making Alex beads, like I say, because you have a different state of energy. You can play it in the GANs, in the field flow is the same. When you're making, now I think in making dual teeth, but with analogy in the nano-coating, making the transistor, making the resistor, the source, the battery, the condenser, the light, LED, all everything in the nano-coating state.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to bring up an old favourite of mine, Rick, and you liked it too, the flying carpet.
The flying carpet, yes.
Yes. I've still got my little round rug. I remember Danny was giving me some instructions, and I was trying to ascertain what it would need to actually fly. And I'm thinking what's brought that to mind for me is the 3 layers of maybe applying 3 different ganses or GANS waters, perhaps, in a particular way to the underneath side of the carpet or the rug, and creating a separation through those layers from the Earth's gravitational fields, and putting my little grandson on top of it and telling him that it is a flying carpet, but he has to wish it or will it or intend it to fly. And he may be a little young at the moment, but I wonder if he, being of the generation that he is, wouldn't poo-hoo the idea as much, and maybe he could get it off the ground. And hopefully I would be able to catch him before he disappeared out the window. But, you know, any ideas further on that one? Because it really still, I remember distinctly Mr. Keshe in one of the teachings in Italy, he told Carolina to go to the car, open the boot, and bring in what was in the boot. And she did, and she came back with a Persian rug. And he referred, and Armin was in the room, and I think Sandy Esch was in there, and Marco, and he said, "What, you know, could you make this fly?"
Can I say something?
Like, yeah.
Do you see the balls?
Yep.
Why?
Yes, good question, Jalal. Intention?
No. The environment. Change the environment. This
right.
rock, it will fly if you put it in different environment with there is no gravity, as they said. It will fly.
Yeah.
So change the environment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And what was I on the right track, do you think, Jalal, by
Of course.
Yep.
The thought is gravitational.
Yep.
So you need the magnetical to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one half of the equation. You need the second one.
Yep. And you think I was on the right track with the applying of ganses to the underside of the rug? You think that would be?
Do that will change the environment?
Yep.
Okay.
Certainly.
So
you
are in the right track.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I might come and visit you, Jalal, and land in your living room.
Well, this is what
you will like it, then. Sorry, Rick. You will like it. We have here -4 now. 4? -4. We have -4 now. So you will like it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, wait, you are complaining of heat and fire? Come here.
I'm not complaining. We've got 24 degrees. It's subtropical. It's not summertime yet. It's quite nice at the moment, Jalal. So maybe I'll wait a little bit until the temperature goes up and it gets too humid, and then I'll come over and I'll land in your living room.
Well, this was the promise that Nikola Tesla had at one point when he was living in an apartment in New York. He said, "My flying machine is able to leave out of my window and go and visit others and come back in and into my apartment." and about the size of a stove, he said. Stoves back then were these kind of square shaped, a bit large kind of structure at that time, but basically it was in the shape of a stove and could leave through his window and travel rapidly to other places. And he sort of hinted that he would visit his friend one day that way. So this was his electric flying machine, and it incorporated 5 of Tesla's inventions, apparently. And it was somehow able to alter the conditions around that apparatus. And Tesla knew a lot about creating conditions and altering the atmosphere around things, that's for sure.
It brings to mind the original picture that was made of the Oasis system, doesn't it? When you mentioned a stove, and
very much so.
Possibly Nikola Tesla. There's a lot more to Nikola Tesla than he let on, even with what he let on, and he may have been more into plasma than we know, but realized the world wasn't ready and never disclosed. But we don't.
When you look at the time period where he lived through the First World War to start with, and then into the beginnings of the Second World War as well. And so there was a lot of shenanigans going back and forth with industries that were supplying both sides and all this kind of nonsense going on, which he saw. And he didn't believe in the war machine. He thought that wars were useless, and he didn't go with all that patriotic destroy the enemy kind of thing. He was much more into peace, into world peace. So he realized at one point that mankind was going to develop powerful energy weapons. And so he was a pretty smart guy. What he did was he developed the energy weapon. It's called the Tesla's sometimes called the death ray or energy beam or this kind of thing. And essentially he gave the design to 5 countries, and that actually forced those 5 countries to work with each other to develop the technology so that they all knew about that technology, so that in effect they wouldn't use it on each other because it's too destructive and it would eliminate each other's armies and that kind of thing. And they're not into eliminating armies, they're into creating a war machine where you can continue supplying stuff. I mean, if you eliminate your enemy, then all of a sudden you can't supply them with stuff anymore, and the game's over. Then you can't even supply your own people anymore because you got no enemy to go up against. So what's the sense of supplying them all? The people will say, well, we don't want war because we're no longer in war. Shouldn't make all this stuff. So, it's a kind of a crazy situation in a way. So Tesla gave out his plans in parts, forcing Russia, Canada, US, Britain, Germany, I think, were the 5. There might have been one other one that I can't remember. And so essentially forced what might have been kind of enemies or at least conflicting parties, forced them to work together on these on revealing this information, or otherwise they would fall behind. So that's part of some of the high technology that got transferred over. A lot of things Tesla didn't even give out because he realized that it would be in the wrong hands. It could be destructive. he realized how low frequency waves can be used to alter people's minds, for example. And he realized that could be a very dangerous thing in the wrong hands. And there's lots of people with wrong hands when he was around. People that were developing New York and the whole of the US and so on, all the industrialists, the railways were going in and putting in the steel works, which are being used in the railways and rail cars and trains, and all the oil burning that had to go on, and the oil refining, and all these different industries that are what we're left with today. That now we are slowly dismantling because, or even rapidly dismantling now, because they no longer serve us the way they did to get us jump started into technology and so on. Now we're finding, oops, our oil is poisoning our, environment and so on and so forth. And some of those technologies are much less lucrative than they used to be. So again, they're being replaced. Electric cars are a great example, and the Tesla electric car is a great example of that, where they just did a test recently and it beat all the popular performance sports cars of the world in times for races and in various performance tests. So this is like a big first. This is sort of in a way the revenge of Tesla, because he said he would eliminate all the oil burning engines of the world, and in a way that Tesla name is about to do that. It's inspired all the manufacturers to get into electric cars now, and all the ones that had diesel cars and trucks are now in trouble because they lied on their emission tests, and now they are paying billions and billions and billions of dollars. And most of the CEOs have been tanked or put in jail, and it's a whole different ballgame. They've all decided, well, I guess we better go with electric after all. And it's looking like in 5 years, you won't see any more internal combustion engines in vehicles. And you will see electric or plasmatic, as Mr. Keshe was describing, the new batteries that won't need charging. Then that makes electric cars very viable and very desirable. It'll make them about 1/100th of the cost to run compared to a petrol burning machine. And we'll look at people with cars with internal combustion engines and go, how can you afford to run such a machine? I just can't believe that people do that anymore. Oh, I love it so much that I just love the sound and smell of that petrol burning. Some people won't give it up. And I can kind of see that. There was a time when I didn't mind those kinds of smells. And now I'm so sensitive that it just makes me instantly sick. So we're in a different world, a different time, and different times require different approaches. And certainly the world is rapidly changing, and we're so lucky to be part of experiencing that rapid change at this time.
I think from what you were saying and what Mr. Keshe said, that there is more to Tesla than even what has been revealed, and he refers to him as beautiful Tesla. And there are great similarities from what you said just then about the way Tesla played the opponents off against each other to bring unity in his time. And there are similar things now with the knowledge of plasma that Mr. Keshe is bringing, whereby the knowledge trumps pardon the pun, the differences between, the secrets of one nation and the secrets of another nation, because basically their secrets are all obsolete There is, they may have a fantastic new jet engine or whatever, but that's just ridiculously obsolete. When you can just fly silently and, thousands and millions of times Mach 25, Mach 50, 20 million times light speed, that's exactly the same strategy that Mr. Keshe is using. And so I would say great souls think alike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. If you look at the life of Tesla, he was very much persecuted like Keshe was in many ways. And, some people thought that Tesla only had ideas and never really made anything. But that wasn't true at all. He almost always made the stuff that he conceived of. In fact, he talked about it in his autobiography of his technique of actually making the machine he was considering. He would make it in his mind. He would make all the parts, put them together, assemble it in his mind, and then actually run the machine for sometimes months. And he would run it and then notate which parts were wearing down and which things needed modifications and what had to be done and so on and so forth. He would do that all by visualizing it first. And then he said, when he actually went to build a machine, it worked every time. So this was his technique. Make it up in your mind or in your, in your, not quite imagination, it's more visualization. You actually make it real, see a picture of it, and it actually functioning in your mind. It takes some training to do that, and some people are better at it than others to actually have a solid 3D visualization of something. Like for me, for example, I've been around vehicles and engines and that kind of thing so long that I can visualize all the parts interacting in the engine while it's running, and I can hear if there's something that's not quite adjusted right or not quite the right clearance or this kind of thing. It might be a slight knock, a little tick here, a little funny noise or something, and I actually feel it or visualize it as it's going around. It's not just an automatic, oh, it's that noise, I've recognized that from before. It's more like you dive right into the engine, become part of it, and you're like this little guy inside listening in and watching all the parts going around, and then you come back out after that microscopic kind of viewpoint and make an evaluation or a diagnostic on it. So it's again, it's good training to learn how to feel the fields in a way, because you extend yourself out to sense what's going on instead of just not just hearing it, but actually sensing it. That's different than hearing.
Didn't Mr. Keshe say also that, similar to Nikola Tesla, that he had been thinking and developing this this unit now that's just been released since he was something like 7 years old? He's been, working like Tesla in his mind, thinking about what ganses and whatever other things might be needed to get the universal body enhancement unit up and running. Am I correct? I think Mr. Keshe said something like that. So again, I see a parallel between two great souls, prophets of science, universal teachers, coming and teaching and being on Earth in time, place, and circumstance suitable to that time, place, and circumstance. And I think Nikola Tesla knew that the time wasn't right for him to fully disclose, and all of these great souls, they know that someone is going to come along at the appropriate moment, and all will be revealed. And that's I think that's pretty obvious if you look at things.
Yeah, definitely. And they try to seed the ground so that those seeds will grow and become something in the future. People like Mr. Keshe and Tesla, they work for the future, not necessarily for the present. And that's a big difference if you're working toward 100 years in the future, because you know that whatever technology you're coming up with is going to be abused for a period of time and go through this whole process. Then you can kind of predict that and find ways to compensate for it, let's say, and make sure that the public gets educated one step at a time so they're not overwhelmed with new information that they rebel against and put you on a cross or a stake and treat you that way, as they have in the past when the various people have made proclamations and whatnot. But we're living in a different time now where we can start to, like, for example, in the first plasma groups about 6 years ago or so, we were pretty, not scared, but yeah, we were scared, scared to, have our names revealed and have our voices heard in a way, to be talking about plasma reactors, these, and free energy generators, and, talking about fusion reactions and nuclear things and all of the stuff that Mr. Keshe was discussing in his first patent way back in 2005. It's can basically, to use a word that we use this time of year, can spook people. It's kind of a spooky thing, and it's, if you know about all that stuff, then you must know some kind of national secret. So maybe you should be locked up because of the things that you're talking about, or I don't know, something like that. We were just not totally forward in the things we were doing. It was kind of secretive in a way. It was not like we were really trying to hide anything, because we didn't have enough solid stuff to hide. But at the same time, we were leery of publicly pronouncing that here's what we're doing. We're working on these plasma reactors and these concepts and so on. It was, it took a while to get used to that, let's say, and have that be okay. And of course, nowadays, we think nothing of it. And if somebody has a new reactor that they show, it's not a big deal, and let's go for it. And so far, we've managed to, keep ourselves from getting harassed or otherwise, pinned down in any way. We've been free to say what we wish to say. Now, of course, we're not getting in the authorities' faces by showing our flying machines that are, invading their airport space and that kind of thing. We haven't quite got there yet. I keep asking for the saucer in the garage, but it hasn't quite manifested yet, or if it has, it hasn't been made public to this group. But that doesn't mean people aren't working on it, and it doesn't mean it's not possible either. So it's interesting, that's for sure.
Carolina was saying this morning in this morning's meeting that there are many little groups of people that are never put their names or their activities into the public, but you know, they've been working feverishly in many different ways in their laboratories, big and small, small maybe, but sometimes in little small laboratories. As you know, Rick, you know, you haven't got the biggest laboratory in the world, but sometimes amazing things happen, possibly that even you yourself, while it's happening. I remember distinctly 129 Tesla, and it was like, well, I know that's historic. I know that's huge, but I wouldn't have a clue what it means, you know, but I was privileged to be one of the people up at some strange hour waiting for something to happen, you know, and there are people like that who are doing things that will, like you said, and Jalal particularly said, if the conditions are created, then the changes can manifest. So I'm a great believer that there are many experimenters that haven't come forward, that haven't raised their hands because of the same reasons that you mentioned, perhaps a fear of persecution. We know Alex was threatened when he came up with his revolutionary Alex beads, and he had to be protected. You know, so there is that, there has been anyway, that definite ominous fear that look, if I give my name, and if I, you know, and I disclose that I have got this thing hovering in my garage, I'm going to get a visit from a limousine with darkened windows, or a you know, the helicopter with the whisper mode, and the men in black come down the wire, and you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not a joke. It you know, it has. We know that there have been groups that are dedicated to silencing scientists, you know, and grab that technology before anyone else does, and either stick it on the shelf so it's forever hidden, or adapt it so they claim it's theirs, and they make the billions and trillions of dollars out of it. So, you know, thank goodness the times have changed that much in the last few years, that people can now feel a little bit more free to come forward.
Yeah, definitely. I actually I gave up on trying to figure out if there's any of these three-letter agencies listening in and you know, worried and about what we're doing and all that kind of thing. And now I just assume that they are, and that they better darn well be listening in, because they need to find out what's going on and what is going to be happening on this planet. And they need to number one, know what's going on, and number two, to protect people such as myself and others that are interested in propagating this technology, and in, you know, sharing the knowledge. And there's nothing that's going to stop that, so they might as well go with the flow, and make sure that those groups are protected, because there's nobody in any of the groups that I've been associated with that's ever had a inkling toward using the technology toward war. It's always been in a peaceful means, so we have no violent tendencies in the groups, and we're not into violent actions and violence at all, basically. So they have nothing to worry about in that sense. And if they want to control technology, well,
Rick,
in a way, they don't have to worry about that either. So it's a worry-free zone. Go ahead, Jalal.
I have a question for all of you. All of you done CO2?
I don't
think
hear
all of
I don't hear a chorus of yeses, but I
yeah,
probably
it
yes
is
from quite
yes.
a few. Yeah,
100% yes.
yeah.
And you do it in the same environment what I do, and Rick do, and John do. Did you try to change the environment of this CO2 box and see the result? if you didn't do it now?
What do you mean by change the environment in some kind of radical way, or you mean like put it on the top of a mountain, or like put radio waves around or something? What do you mean exactly, Jalal?
Do whatever it takes that you think that you did change the environment.
That Jalal is exactly what Mr. Keshe said at the meeting he came to the other day. At the end, he said, start experimenting with different conditions and don't just make the same 4 ganses, because there are billions and trillions of different ganses, and they all have different fields, and they all have different values, and there's no harm experimenting and changing different parameters. And the people that were in the meeting, I could see they were paying attention, and because they are experimenters. Now, let's get this straight: I am not an experimenter, but I follow things. I follow very closely, but my passion is elsewhere rather than hands-on. But that may change, and that's the way progress is made. It moves out. It moves into expansive areas. We Mr. Keshe said when they did Raman spectroscopy on samples that he gave, there were unknown elements, lots of them.
So let me ask you a question, Dean. You are CO2 books. Yes?
You talking to me, Jalal?
Yes, yes. You are a CO2 books. You are a gas.
Yes. I am a CO2 box.
Okay.
I am a GANS production machine, a GANS production reactor.
Okay. If I bring you here in Sweden, in
Yeah.
1,000 years, 2,000 years, you will change. If I bring
Yes.
you to Africa, 1,000, 2,000 years, you will change.
Yep.
So this is simple idea how to change environment.
Yes.
So these guys will change according to the environment.
Yep.
Thank you.
You are welcome, Jalal. Thank you.
Okay, can anybody remember anything else for the tools and toys list? That things that they might have seen demonstrated, could be from Mr. Keshe or from this group. Over the years, there's been various things. We've shown lots of different reactor combinations, but I'm not so much into like a maggrav setups, for example. I suppose kids can interact with that by sitting around and feeling the fields or sensing what it feels like to be in the same room as something like that. I'm thinking something a little more direct. Did mention a simple plasma ball. I think that should make it. I should think that that should go on the list. I'm going to add that. How about a pain pen? That might be a good device to play with. Have an owie on your finger. Here, try using the pain pen. And have one kid use it on someone else to help with their pain. They can learn how to...
Stop reading my mind, Rick. I was just about to say that because my grandson is now riding a little bicycle around very rapidly. He's only 4, but he's just progressed onto a larger size, and he often takes a tumble. You know, not often, but he will fall off from time to time, and he has various little grazes on parts of his body. And I was thinking exactly the same. Silly me, as his granddad, you know, why don't I carry a pain pen? And when he does have a little comes a cropper, pull out the pain pen and say, "Hang on, what do you feel? What?" And see what his reaction is.
There you go.
I'm going to do that from now. I'm never going to leave home and go down to the skate park or the park without a pain pen. You know.
Well, that's a great idea, actually. And now that you think
yes,
of it, now that you mention that, I should do the same. Have one in the car all the time. And in fact, you know what we all should have, and what would be a great product for someone to put together, would be a plasma first aid kit, basically. And you'd have your pain pen, your pain pads, and little stashes of Ganzas and various other things that if you come into a situation suddenly, like for example, someone falls down the skate park and they've got a little owie on their knee or something, and you could have just standard things for bandages and so on, but why not have a pain pad and a pain pen and some of the other things that we know do work so well? And it could be sort of a just like the little emergency kits they have with bandages and that kind of thing. You open up your plasmatic repair kit.
a little
kit.
Yeah, an atomizer, a little atomizer with Ganzas that you could just spray straight on. You know, Ganz water, I mean. And just
that is the most amazing thing. I've had amazing results with skin irritations just by spraying the Ganz water on.
Yes,
amazing.
And it's a terrific idea that people can have those little, all the knowledge seekers anyway could carry around a little kit. It would sell like hotcakes, even if only amongst the knowledge seekers. But I dare say it'd catch on pretty quickly because a result. Go on.
The issue being that it becomes part of health and doctors and all that kind of thing. But on the other hand, there's some laws about first responders and giving first aid. If you're there and you have a first aid kit, you're actually obligated to use it if you have any kind of knowledge at all and that kind of thing.
Well, coming from my background as a traffic controller working on the highways, that's absolutely correct. And if you come upon a traffic accident and injuries, unless you are actually qualified, in in an official way as a first aid certificate or whatever, you're at risk if you attempt as a non-qualified or certified first aider or even medical practitioner. If you move that person in some way purely with the intention of doing good, then ramifications can come back. You're not covered in law for interfering. So the instructions that have been given to people like myself is you immediately call 000 or 999, whatever the emergency number is. And however, painful it may be to not be able to do anything, but just get the ambulance and get the first responders with qualifications there as fast as possible, because you may do more damage. And then you are open to being sued. This is all legal situation, but it is a fact,
Yeah. But there's also common sense, if someone's
common sense
lying there bleeding and you see something that could be used as a compress to stop the bleeding.
But common sense
That's
seemed to leave the world in the last century somewhere
I
behind.
just wrote about that recently. I have a saying that common sense isn't.
Yeah.
It's neither common nor is it a sense. So common sense is kind of a misnomer in many ways. But we're losing common sense in our society in some ways, I think. So
well, we're being over-regulated in many ways, and and controlled to be afraid to act in a Mrs. Keshe has said it, and Carolina has said it in that's how a lot of the problems started in Belgium when they just started helping people, and that gave leverage to that corrupt government to start proceedings against them. But I think through all this legal going on at the moment and so on, it is not going to be that way very long. People will be able to, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. If the person, that is in difficulty is made better, that result overrides any legal technicalities, doesn't it? Really?
Depends who's lobbying in the government for various pharmaceutical companies and how strong they are, I guess. But basically that's it. And I think we're starting to see a movement now, sort of a pushback, because the doctors and pharmaceuticals have set certain limits, and now people are pushing against that in a way. They want to have their natural herbs and different things that alternative health practices and that kind of thing. And now, of course, they're finding out that, gee, it actually works as good as chemotherapy anyway, and this kind of thing. So we're in a different world, and it's in a flux right now, and some of the established characters and structures are dissolving. It's just the way it is, and they have to recognize that and go with the flow.
Totally agree. They can't last in the way they have very much longer. Remember that analogy of the fan? It's just the plug's out, but it's just spinning around. And imperceptibly, it seems sometimes slowly just winding down to a stop.
Yep, that's about it.
Mr. Keshe was talking how, there will be massive changes, planetary changes, when large corporations see the light, and they already are. That's the conferences. That's the reason the conferences are there, is to show something absolutely proven. It's not a theory. With nothing to prove. Proof of concept is already done. And now it's just a matter of providing the fund, the partnerships necessary to create large scale transformation of even the atmosphere we breathe, the way people think, how the anger that we all have that wells up within us will not be there. The negative emotions will cease. And I asked that question.
You just mentioned two things in a row there: the atmosphere, and what Jalal mentioned before, conditions or atmosphere, and this negativity that's maybe pervades the earth, or that we find a lot of the population are depressed or angry or upset or in a pinch or somehow just not at peace with themselves, right? So that's a major factor that needs to be addressed. Well, it turned out there's a study that came out just a couple of weeks ago regarding that, the connection between air pollution and people's mood and the negative emotions in particular, and stress emotions like anger and violence, and they made a direct connection between air pollution and violence. The more air pollution, the more violence occurred. And I'm thinking, wow. And we consider that every single person on this planet is exposed to air pollution to some degree or another. Every breath we take has particles from the other side of the planet that have arrived to us at that moment. And they're from all kinds of processes that we wouldn't even care to think about because it would be so gross. And here we are just sucking it in all the time. 20% of the air pollution from Canada comes from China, for crying out loud, from the high altitude airstreams that come in, and so on and so forth. And part of the pollution from other countries comes from Canada. It's one dumps on the other in the same way as our cars are designed. So the exhaust pipe of the car in front of you dumps on you, and your exhaust pipe dumps into the face of the person behind you, and so on, right down the line of cars lined up for a traffic jam, let's say. So all these people are sucking in bad air, which kills, by the way, approximately 8 million people a year just from bad air. 8 million. Over 20,000 people every single day die from air pollution. And yet we worry about 20 people that died in a van because they were refugees. Well, 1,000 times more people died from just bad air. And 1,000 times more than that have gotten sickened by it.
Well, how many people?
It's only one in 1,000 that get exposed that die. So there's 1,000 getting sick from that one that dies. So it's 1,000 times 7 million. That's 7 billion people that are being sickened by it every year.
How many people every day, Rick, are sitting right now in traffic jams, car to car, bumper to bumper, behind the diesel truck, behind the four-wheel drive diesel U-Butte, RAV, whatever they call them, RV, the this and the that, all slowly dying of poisoning whilst listening to their stereo and thinking how wonderfully advanced everything is, but they're all being slowly poisoned. So
it's the biggest event in my life, actually, and it makes me instantly sick, and I can be sick for days in some instances and so on. Super sensitive to that, as many people that have been sensitized through their life because they were mechanics or they worked in a machine shop or with solvents or with gas or with this or with that, and you become sensitized. And turns out the greatest loss of work hours in industrialized countries is from skin diseases. And almost all the skin diseases are caused from things at work. So we have, and almost all of those skin diseases are not covered by workman's compensation or insurance, or health insurance or any of that stuff, because they don't recognize skin diseases as coming from a particular source, such as the solvents that you use at work or the air pollution at work or whatever.
And how people are breathing in these substances. We've got a large manifestation of cancer that's occurring just from breathing in silica dust. You know. So anyway, there's millions of things that are floating in the atmosphere. We're breathing them all the time. And my question to Mr. Keshe was, what about the people that can't or won't sit inside the universal body enhancement unit? And he almost chastised me for being a typical human that doesn't listen, because he said that's why we're going to the industrial stage, to the industrial size, because it can't be done. Both are necessary. The small baby steps that are being made, or the individuals that are doing their thing, but there has to be a major industrial-sized propagation of plasma all around the Earth.
So you go to something like a movie theater, and you experience this environment that's created with special atmosphere and maybe special sounds and sights as well. Maybe the video actually educates you about the process that you're about to go through in the next couple of hours of this transformation as a group. And that's
even more
beautiful idea.
Even more than that, Mr. Keshe was saying satellites will be put up that can cover thousands and thousands of square miles, and radiate fields out over large areas of the Earth's surface, whereby there won't be one single place on Earth that isn't covered by those fields. And bring it on. Jalal, what were you going to say? I hope you're not going to ask another question. I get nervous when you start asking questions. You're, yeah.
Okay, Rick, can you draw in this picture?
Do you want a whiteboard instead?
No, leave it. Wait a minute.
You can draw on it if you like.
Yeah, I will draw here. Guys, this is a single copper wire. Normal. Yes?
Yep.
Everything, environment will influence it. If you put something here, it will carry it out to here, like electricity. And this is nano-coated copper wire. What is the difference? Nothing can come in, nothing can come out. As a human being, you have a source, you have a body, which is nano-coated. 1 second, Sharif. So, how the environment is making something with you, give you sick or make you happy. Any question?
Well, if a lot of that is coming from inside the nano-coating.
Thank you. This is the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because you are here, dynamic. You have a soul, you have emotion. So You choose to interact with this one
Mhm.
and you copy it inside you. You choose
Yep.
to interact with this one and copy it inside you. Copy. You are copying inside you. You
Yep.
choose the food inside, and the limbs copies the fields and separate it here, and magnet pull everything inside you. You are sitting calm and peaceful and very beautiful and happy, and you open the channel of this frequency or this frequency and killing here, bad here, stealing here, whatever, whatever. And you will see yourself in 1 second, you become like a fire.
Yep.
So you, even you go to the enhancement chamber and you are not accepting this science, never will change ever.
Mhm.
Because you are capsulate inside.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Time
you,
to-
Jalal.
Oh, I thought you'd leave your little guy on there for us.
You can draw it.
You can't bring him back. Can you resurrect him? Or is he gone into the
Wait,
afterlife?
is there undo? There is no undo, I think. No.
Ah, there it
yes,
is.
okay.
Ah!
Yes, hey, he's back. It is the Christ.
Okay, I
We
will
all
leave it.
now worship. Dearly beloved, thank you for
I will
gathering.
leave it. I will leave it for you.
That's great. So, okay, now I was going to suggest you got your internal and external environments as you brought up here. So, what if, say, we have this guy, and all of a sudden this thing comes in of anger. This lightning bolt from somebody else is subjecting anger into this environment of this little guy. Now, what should he do as a soul in this soul body, but dealing with the nanomaterials? You've got the outer skin, you've got your inner environment. And so do you resist that anger? Do you deflect the anger? Do you allow the anger to just simply pass through and without any restriction at all? Or transform it in some other manner? How do you see your little guy dealing with this new intense energy form that's approaching it?
Through detachment, I think, where, yes, we're constantly bombarded with anger and fear and problems and this and that, but we have to learn detachment inside our plasma body reactor, full of ganses and so on, so that we don't allow that anger to manifest itself inside our special vehicle, our existence. With detachment, it may just pass us by, like the Oasis Tom Sellis. It just passes by.
Exactly.
It goes around. It won't penetrate the oasis of our soul, if it's in balance with our physicality. It's impervious to any weapons, anger, anything directed at it, gross or subtle. Of course, I'm speaking theoretically, but
theoretically, yes. We tend to have something that some hook that usually gets us. Like someone's in your face and is really angry and just screaming at you. It's hard to keep a pleasant.
I'm not saying I mastered the art.
Well, that's one of the true tests, because anger is one of the strongest emotions. There's a saying that of all the negative emotions, anger is the greatest and most destructive of the negative emotions. And that justified anger is the strongest and most destructive of the forms of anger.
Totally agree.
Kind of freaks people out in a way, because we figure when we're angry, it's bad to be angry, but it's good to be angry if you're justified, because you know you're right. So is you have a right to be angry. But that's not really true, because you're just basically destroying your own those materials that could be used for your evolution are being eaten up in that situation.
They are. You're allowing, by justified anger, you're allowing that anger inside yourself, inside your physical, and sure enough, it will end up in some kind of imbalance and manifest itself as a very problematic disease or disorder inside your own body. No doubt about that, and I totally agree. Anger and depression and misery, and they're all, and fear. That's a biggie.
I am totally not agree with you two guys.
All right.
I'm totally not agree.
Oh my
What's
God.
your perspective? Let us have it.
I will kill you guys.
You're fired. You're fired.
You're fired. You're
I'll kill you twice.
Okay. Okay. You said negative emotion, but you forget one thing between negative energy emotions. Negative energy, and this is the most important thing. Negative or positive, nothing such a thing. Emotions, take out the emotions. In this case, you will have, you are creating fire. Now, you can create fire with a lighter. This fire, is it negative or positive? Please answer only this question. It's where you put it, how you deal with it.
Yeah, how it's used, how it's applied.
Yes.
Yep.
Fire can, without fire, you don't have anything such a advancement and everything you see. This luxury. But with fire, you can destroy everything.
Yep.
Even the plasma, what you are working with. You take it out, use it, put it back again.
So Jalal, when Mr. Keshe said we can forget but not forgive, or when he was saying that caused a bit of trouble in some people, that you're actually saying there is a place for justified anger if it's, is that what you're saying, that it's not going to be causing a negative react or a
if you allow me.
Yeah, I'm allowing.
Okay, you have an ear and you have an eye. If you hear something, you say it is negative. It will make you angry. If you shut this one out, do you hear this? No. If you see something make you angry or make you sad, if you shut this one, but because we are used to this 5 cent and we are using it all the time, we consider it is a fact. Nothing is a fact in this world, and especially with Mr. Keshe teaching. He's opened your inner eyes for a lot. If something happened, if you think this something wrong happened to you, you allowed it. You are the magnet. Please, you are the magnets. Whatever happened in your country, you are the magnets. You, that means the soul of this country. If you are strong enough to change one cell in your body, you will change the whole body. It's the same applied to you and your country followers.
Mhm.
But we are in this process, all of us. It's not that you are aware of everything now. You are aware in 1 second coming.
Mm.
Times do not exist, so you will achieve it. And this is the process what we are going to.
Which
If you
which remind,
go ahead.
if I may, yes, thank you, Jalal. What Carolina was saying this morning about looking at an apparently very horrific situation from a different perspective. It's not negative, it's actually positive. The lady who was in the aeroplane sitting next to the window when the window burst open and her body was sucked into the...
Exactly.
And when Sandor passed away, people were saying, why didn't and shouldn't this and that? And in the end, the definitive comment from Mr. Keshe was Sandor made the decision himself for reasons known only to his soul as to why he left his physicality at the time he did. And the people in the truck that were all 39 bodies were found, but they sacrificed themselves so that the greater good can be served. So it really is, isn't it? It's a matter of there is no negative and there is no positive. There is no good or bad. It's just the processes of the soul working its way through its existence, elevating its existence, if I can say that.
And it
Yes?
becomes a matter of perspective, right? Whether we're able to
Yeah.
see the big picture or focused on a smaller picture of the, it's a different level. There's different, so once we get the idea that there can be different levels of understanding whereas in the next level, let's say, where we get a glimpse of it now, if we get a full picture of that next level, then we get a picture of a greater totality that's more encompassing, and it's way more encompassing in if you think of it in terms of gradations or gradations of understanding. So that in the case that, you know, the example you gave of the people that died in the truck, for example, and it seems really you know, pretty gross and it's awful and all of that on one level, but on the other level, if it leads toward you know, directly toward world peace, for example, maybe China will make some specific laws enacted to be a benefit to refugees and really help with smoothing out that whole issue that seems to be so big on with President Trump and the refugee thing. And in fact, all of countries of the world are really facing crises with refugees now and with people coming into the country and immigrants and that. So perhaps something will get resolved in order to make it a safer, easier, better process, and thereby, like, maybe what if they announce, okay, we're going to eliminate all the borders of the world because it's the only way that we can solve the refugee crisis.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
What? And it's suddenly announced, you know, sort of in passing, that they're going to eliminate the national borders because now it's a necessity for world peace, and otherwise we'll never get anywhere with it, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, maybe President Trump's right there with it because he finally realizes that's the only way to keep people out is not to put up walls, because they love climbing walls, and it's just a great barrier to try to get through in order to secretly sneak around and so on. But once everything's in the open, it changes the whole scenario, and maybe people won't want to immigrate to other countries so much because they'll find out their own country has a lot of beauties to it that all it needed was to open up a bit and be less, autocratic or whatever thing they happen to be doing. But I think the world's in such a state of flux right now that those major changes could easily suddenly take place over a very short period of time. So we can learn to expect miracles like that. And in fact, we can help it along by the thing that Carolina mentioned of daily wishes. If we make a daily wish for world peace or for, some aspect that we can conceive of that can lead toward a greater understanding for everyone and for a better outcome as for human physicalities, and better in terms of being able to make that connection with the soul, so that we can have a more open, transparent, and true experience of this lifetime. So I think all of that's available to us. Of course, it's always available in every moment, but I think globally that the times are changing. Times they are changing, as the song goes.
It's a learning process, I think. Totally agree with Jalal, and I totally agree with you, Rick. And it's just that we are learning these perspectives, to change the perspectives and to see the give and take and the flow of magnetic and gravitational, and allow it to happen without it necessarily affecting our equilibrium within ourselves. That's all it is. But I'm no master of it. I still have angry outbursts, and things get up my nose and whatever, and I don't like that. Funnily enough, if I'm working on a workshop transcribing, it somehow disappears and fades away into the background. But I can be easily drawn if I catch a glimpse of some news item or something. Oh my God!
So you are fired. Why you are coming back to the work? You're already fired.
Yeah. Thank God I'm fired from the job that I used to do. Now I'm free a lot more. Yeah, it's having an effect, a positive effect on me. Less angry.
No. You are fired from the old system. Now you are in the plasma world.
Yes, Jalal. That's right. Exactly.
Out of the frying pan and into the plasma.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else like to go forward with something here? Any more things to add to the list? What about, oops, I have to go into other mode. See, how do I stop? Oh, I know. What about for kids and for tools for learning? How can sound be part of that? Music, for example, or just listening to sounds, maybe like, for example, discovering.
Sorry, Rick, one thing. Please, guys, come to the private teaching. In the private teaching, we can open up a lot of information, and it makes me sad, really. I cannot share with you a lot of information. So come to the private teaching. There you will see a different world, really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jalal, for that invitation. We have a hand up, Menacham. Would you like to go ahead there? You have something you'd like to share? You'll have to open your microphone. There you go.
Hello.
Yeah, can you say who you are and where you're from? And
Sure. Good day. Hello. Excuse me. My name is Menachem Ratman. I'm from London, England, United Kingdom. And I'm very interested in the radio that you've built.
okay.
I was wondering if I could ask a little bit about it, please.
Sure, go ahead.
What does it have inside the box?
Okay, I'll bring up the instructable, go through that briefly.
Is it just a radio?
What's in the box is just a very simple crystal radio circuit. So it ends up with these parts. Excuse me. There's the materials. There's the 1N34A diode that I've talked about. There's a resistor. There's a capacitor. There's a variable capacitor. There's a coil. That's an induction coil with a ferrite core. Standard AM radio, crystal radio kind of setup there.
How many turns?
I think it's 10 wraps around the I think it'd be called the secondary or the primary, whichever, the smaller loops. And I forget, I think it's 100 turns on the other one. I believe it was 10 to 1.
As Keshe would say, you have to experiment.
Yeah, or just buy the unit as
It's an enamel coil, right? Would it work with a nano-coated coil?
Well, that's a very, very good question, and it should. The nano-coating acts as an insulation. So in the same way, if we look at that, in fact, there's a better picture of it here somewhere. There it is.
It should work with okay, that's interesting.
See, now
So
it's got...
I'm interested to test that. I would like to build a radio with a nano-coated coil. I'm interested to test that.
So this comes with the fine windings already on it, and then I wrapped around the heavy windings here. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 wraps of the heavier wire around the coated resin coated wire, the fine wire. So
it's just enamel wire, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
they're both enamel.
Yeah, so you could substitute nano-coated, especially for the heavier wire that you see in the picture here, and it should act as in the same way as a enamel-coated wire if you do the nano-coating properly. And in fact, it should act much better as a plasmatic antenna instead of just a essentially matter level with electrons moving back and forth. And this is the way it supposedly works, although it's magnetic fields, you could say as well, depending if you look at it electrically or magnetically. So this is the basic coil, but you can also run a long antenna rather than this short antenna, and it's part of the layout here that you can see. It has options for a long antenna or short antenna, and that's actually the coil that you see down here, this that induction coil. And there's the variable capacitor, the resistor, the other capacitor, and then the diode. And other than a ground and the antenna, that's all there is to the circuit. Other than you plug it in over here to your computer sound in. And like I say, you need the software, the audio hijack software, in order to convert the signal properly. Otherwise, you'll just hear, if you were to plug it in.
You've got 3 antennas?
Well, it's optional. You have an optional, you can put a short antenna in, or you can have a long antenna wire, and it's a slightly different connection the way it hooks up, but it's quite, as Doug was saying, you can experiment to your own suitability as to which antenna works best, because it's not, you're not tuning to a particular radio station. If you're tuning to radio stations, AM radio, which is what most crystal radios are for, I mean, it's you're supposed to use it to tune into a radio station. That's what normal radios do. But this radio is so a broad spectrum. If you make it even more broad spectrum with a different kind of antenna setup than normal, then you'll get a different range of frequencies that it'll naturally want to tune into. So instead of focusing on the radio spectrum, it might be better on the light spectrum, or the audio spectrum, or the ultraviolet or something, or some other realm, magnetics and so on. So I highly recommend just trying different things. What I did was, I have a 22-foot copper wire strung along my ceiling in my living room / lab here, and that can be used.
Tesla used a loop, right? In all the drawings of Tesla, he's got his antennas, his original antenna was just a wire loop. It wasn't a long wire antenna.
Essentially, yeah, he had a different way of broadcasting energy and radio waves. He didn't actually believe in the Hertzian, what's called the Hertzian waves. That he thought that those kinds of waves weren't useful for radio transmissions and would never work properly. And when I tune in my car radio, I tend to agree. The AM is terrible, and the FM has a lot to be desired as far as radio signals go. Here we are in the modern day and age, and you can't even get a clear radio signal. What the heck went wrong?
Do you say that Tesla was saying that it's not, frequency is not megahertz, it's plasma? Maybe that's what he was.
Well, in a way, he used the whole atmosphere, the resonance of the area between the Earth and our whole atmosphere, basically, as a cavity, and it resonated, and that's the Schumann frequency. Well, Tesla knew about that. In fact, he's the first one to discover it, and they attribute it to Schumann in the 1950s, but Tesla was at it in 1900, 50 years before that. And he discovered also the resonant frequency of the Earth itself, which is different than the Schumann frequency. Schumann frequency is just the resonant frequency of the cavity itself, which is handy for broadcasting radio waves or other.
Did Tesla discover the radio?
He actually, yes, he is actually attributed as the inventor of the radio. after he died. They gave it
Inventor
to
of the
him
radio, the telephone, the television, just about everything.
Rick, is your radio a crystal radio or a spirit radio?
Well, what is the difference, would you say?
Well, have you built? Is the box the box? I saw a number of devices. There was a round device that you have on the round jar with those components inside, and then you have a box.
Yeah, the box is exactly the same components inside of it, but it's put together by someone else that put together in a certain way. The box one is actually tuned to the Schumann frequency. That's Mr. Gold, who made that box. That's his specialty, is tuning his devices.
Mr. Gold made it.
Yeah, E.J. Gold's his name, high-tech shaman in Northern California. He makes these devices tuned to the Schumann frequency because that Schumann frequency is 7.83 hertz, right? Very low frequency, 7.83 hertz. Well, it just so happens that the brainwave frequency of 7 to 8 hertz in that range is the theta brainwave frequency. And the theta brainwave frequency is for deep psychic and, shamans go into the trances and that kind of thing and go and get information from the deep subconscious in the theta state. It's the theta is like complete relaxation and you're able to access all the psychic realm. And then there's beta, which is a little faster brainwave frequency around 10 hertz. And that's more ecstasy and kind of, meditation and that kind of thing. Then you get into the busy beta brain, which is up in the 15 to 20 cycles per second. And that's sort of when we're worried and we're hassling with stuff and busy and doing things and all engaged and so on. But that's it's not the relaxed brain of the theta.
I was listening to a show where I apologize for interrupting all the time.
No,
it's a terrible habit of mine. I was listening to a show where they were mentioning a person has to make a wish. And I was thinking, I have a wish. For a long time, I've had a wish. Ever since I saw that box, I had a wish. I would like to replicate E.J. Gold's box, whatever it is, that radio. I thought it was, I just found it I find it very extremely interesting to me. And
yep, well, just
I've had a wish to replicate it.
Right on. Well, I put the link in the chat there, and you can download the full instructions. There's a PDF that comes with the instructables with step-by-step instructions that I put in here. All the steps.
I get thrown off by the round jar because.
Well, you can make it any way you want. You don't have to make a round jar. In fact, you can buy one of these little wooden boxes. I've done the same thing and made a radio in a little wooden box, or you can use any container you like, or not
so
even
it's the
have
same.
a container.
To replicate it, it's the same thing, just not a jar. It's a box and the antennas with a crystal wound inside.
Yeah, and what you put into it will be your creation. It'll sound a little differently. It'll tune a little differently than.
Right, I could put a crystal radio inside. Yeah.
You might want to put your crystal radio inside. You might want to put
a
a little
nano-coated
chunk of crystal of some sort inside, or maybe you want to put some GANs in with it. Maybe you want to nano-coat some parts of it. Maybe you want
nano-coated coil.
Try different weird antenna structures and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm interested to replicate it with a nano-coated coil. Maybe that would be an interesting experiment. For the sake of plasma.
Definitely get back to us if you do that and find something interesting with it. There's a lot that can be done with this seemingly simple little device, but I was when I was really into it, I was literally amazed by so much capability from. They actually put a manual out in the 1950s with this diode and a couple of similar diodes.
Why did you make two
company.
coils? Why did you make two coils instead of just one long coil of 120 turns, let's say?
Well, you mean which you mean these coils
Like
here
on the
that you
crystal
see?
radio, original crystal radio, it would just have one long coil of 120 turns on a thin wire.
120 turns. What do you mean 120 turns?
No, one coil is the antenna coil and the other one is for tuning.
Right, yeah, it should be clear. This is a tuning coil. It's called the induction coil, and it resonates along with the antenna to help pull in the signal. But the antenna itself can be these wound antennas, as you see here, or you see I show how to build them here. So you can make these antennas that are, I think they're about
Schematic.
20 feet
Apologize, I
long or
haven't looked
something
at the
like that.
schematic very well. I
Uh,
have to have a look at that schematic because that's new to me.
yeah,
I haven't seen that before actually, but I'll watch it back on the show. I won't waste your time with that.
yeah, it's got a lot of details in this instructable. It's pretty long and thorough and so on.
I've
They
seen the
got
instructable.
right
I
into it.
don't know, somehow I must have missed that schematic. I didn't notice that schematic with the 3 antennas. I've never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
Optional, different options. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
never
still
noticed
got
that schematic.
still
Must
got a
be there.
day before Halloween to put it together. It'd be fun
Yeah,
to play
yeah, to
with
get the
kids
spooky
or
radio.
something. You could hook it up
Yeah,
to
I'm not sure
your
about the spooky radio.
front entrance and maybe do something spooky with it. Yeah, there's lots of possibilities. So anyway, that's a project that people can
Yeah,
think
that's really
about.
cool. You know, there was 2 things I actually was interested to ask about. One is the radio. The other one is a battery. You were talking about, you know, at one point you mentioned Mr. Keshe has got, you know, new future batteries of the future. You know, for 2020, it's going to be a new system of new batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Won't need the old system, God willing.
Don't have
And
to charge. You don't have all these charger systems set up. And did you know, just by the way, I'll just interrupt you briefly, the charger systems for electric cars that are set up in the US right now, they have a massive system that they're bringing in for charging up because they want to convert all of the fleet to electric. The company that owns the charging, the largest charging network is an oil company. So go ahead.
yeah, no, I'm just interested to ask about a little bit about. I also heard on one of the other shows someone mentioned that he has, maybe he's using the GANs and the wireless system somehow, but he has his laptop and his cell phone and everything's running off Dr. Keshe's somehow Dr. Keshe's plasma energy systems. But I didn't see a lot of people talking about it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of information or shared knowledge going around about it of a lot of people. You know, it doesn't seem like he was saying he's giving workshops and teaching people in his area of how they can do this to operate their cell phones. I was thinking that's wonderful. That's the kind of thing a lot of more people got to do. And if I could help out in any way, I'd be very interested to do to help people get their cell phones and laptops running on a wireless, you know,
Well,
chargerless.
Gianni was showing that in the last plasma group, I believe, how he does a special coating on his laptop batteries and some of the circuits inside and so on. He showed all the details of that. So if you want to review, he goes pretty much step by step how to do that. He's rejuvenated older computers that the batteries are practically dead, and he's able to make them work quite well and continue working for a couple of years or something. Yeah.
How would I
So
find out about that? Who is that?
Gianni.
Gianni.
Gianni Marine. He's
Gianni.
Romanian.
Not sure if he's here right now. Yeah, he's here right now.
All right. Okay. Well, I
The
don't
thing
know.
is,
Maybe he'd like to
the thing
share
is
any.
to go. Yeah, the thing is to go to Keshe's original patents and experiment.
That's true.
He's got everything on black and white.
Yeah, he keeps telling us that's what he's doing, is going back and doing the stuff that we've ignored from the patents, and that's how he's building the self-running generator for the new body enhancement unit, and doing some of the field work and so on to make the unit work, and all of that is already in the patents apparently, and already the basics have already been revealed, and he just is going to develop it because we didn't, kind of.
I also made an interesting experiment using a crystal cell in combination with the it's just a single maggrav coil, and then instead of a capacitor, it's using the Q, is it called the Q device as a capacitor, because that is really a capacitor. Sense. Wired up with some crystal cells. I have a couple of them wired up, actually.
So what was the results of that?
Yeah, it's working fine. It doesn't seem to do much or make much of a difference to a system running with a crystal cell. But it works, so it's obviously, it's everything turns it running in plasma. I'm just using an LED, a couple of crystal cells, so it's low voltage. I'm not even sure I actually created the correct crystal cells, because I don't know, it's kind of similar to the tube cells, which I experimented with without great success, and I haven't confirmed I've had great success with the tube cells I've created, because I've watched a lot of videos where people seem to be able to create a crystal cell that can run a motor. And I've created a lot of crystal cells and managed to run LEDs without any trouble, but I haven't seemed so far to be able to manage to run a motor, which is very
Well,
interesting.
there's a battery that was made, I think it was over 150 years ago. I think it might have been even 200 years ago. A battery that rings a bell, and it's been ringing the bell continuously for the last 150 years.
Right, yeah. There's also another battery.
It's a very basic layered type battery that would be simple to make, and it was one of the original types of batteries, is these layer type batteries. And so, I mean, making a battery that lasts a long time and actually functions is not that great of a deal, but making one that's actually commercially viable and can function as a plasma battery and be self-sufficient and all of that is still a bit of a challenge, and is actually the core central part of the technology. That's the part of the Pandora's box that once that part gets developed out to the public, that means the rest of the toys must come out of the box as well, including everything from what some people call free energy or self-sufficient energy, through to the creation of materials, the health benefits, the creation of positive positioning and lift. All of that will rapidly come from the implementation of this energy generator that Mr. Keshe proposes. It is the core of the spaceship technology. So it's not just a small thing for, making new flashlights or something. It's for illuminating the entire humankind into a whole other dimension of plasma technology that'll replace everything else. So it's not to be taken lightly in a way. That's why Mr. Keshe is very careful introducing it and implementing it, and trying to keep us from going too fast, but at the same time trying to keep going with it as well. So
Well, I mean, a crystal cell is free energy. It's not that far from charging your cell phone. Giovanni, if that's his name, is saying that he's got a system. I'm not sure if he's here, and we can correspond with him to discuss his system.
Johnny Marine
Johnny,
is his
Johnny
name.
Oreen. Johnny Oreen. Excuse me. My apologies.
Gianni-Marin. Gianni, ¿estás escuchando?
Johnny.
He speak to you in Spanish or in Romanian, if you understand it.
I should speak, but I can't speak a word of either of those languages. My apologies.
well, we can translate if you need.
Okay, I guess. I'm not sure if
Well,
he's able to power his cell phone.
Supposedly Tesla put up a car in 1932 which had an 80 horsepower electric motor, and he fed it with 12 electronic valves and a 60 centimeter antenna.
Okay.
He did this in 1932. He tried to sell the design for 2 years. He got fed up. Pardon?
There's a guy in Bulgaria, actually. There's a guy in Bulgaria who sold me the plans to build free energy device.
Yeah, in that zone, they work with a lot of those the sparking spheres, and you sort of generate electricity out of it. Cold electricity, they call it, many of them.
I've heard of cold electricity, but what's that about spheres, sparking spheres? Tesla coils, you mean?
They have two spheres that have a gap, and you got sparks shooting from one sphere to the other.
Right. Okay. So I purchased plans for a free energy device using a ferrite rod, an aluminium grid. The plans have now gone for free, public, all over the internet. However, I actually haven't managed to replicate it successfully yet, and I don't know if anyone will.
You know, that's the thing. There's those plans are a dime a dozen in a way. There's lots of people selling different plans for so-called free energy devices. Some of them are called Tesla free energy devices. And
the only thing is, this guy looks like Rubenikov's grandson. I swear on my life. I don't know why I think that, but he looks like Rubenikov's grandson. I say that, but he's got videos of him doing all of Rubenikov's experiments, and he shows evidence of every single one of them. He knows what he's doing. It's all true. It's all real. If you watch what he's doing. He's got a flying platform. It's got everything. And everyone can have that. It's very simple. He's using a Tesla coil. He's got all the schematics. It's all gone free on the internet.
Yep, there's lots of things on the internet and lots of stuff to play with. As Mr. Keshe says, and I've often quoted, there's as many types of reactors as there are stars in the universe.
Okay, but let's put it this way. You want to know when I built the flying platform, and I want to build the flying platform. So,
well, go ahead. What's holding you back? What's holding you back? Is it money, or is it time? Or is it knowledge, or what do you need?
Nothing's holding me back.
Okay.
You just need enough bugs to get their wings to put under the platform.
I don't need enough bugs. I have the wings. And I don't need the wings because his other schematic, you can do it without the bugs. You could do everything in two ways. You can do everything with nature, everything Rubenikov's did. If you look at what this guy's doing, what he taught his grandson, he's a blinking genius. You could do everything in two ways, with nature or with electronics. That's the truth. That's the reality. You have to see what he's done. Look at Rubenikov. He's an artist. He's a blinking genius.
You are
It's
right, but
ingenious. This
is
flying
needed
platform work with the bugs.
is
We had
needed
a
understanding the concept, because when you're talking the Grebennikov, you're talking cavity, the frequency. You're talking the Tesla coil, yes, high voltage, but it's how is use it. It's not important you have the Tesla coil or Grebennikov platform. It's about how I understanding and apply this knowledge.
right. It's just a lifter. All it is a lifter. Anyone can build a lifter.
Yep, there's lots of things to build. Anyway, we're into over 3.5 hours here now, so I need to wrap things up for today's show. Anything else to people would like to bring up before we end here? And any last words of wisdom or otherwise? I'll note one thing in the news that came up yesterday, I think, or a couple of days ago.
Thank you very much.
There's a Canadian-made invisibility shield. I don't want to show the website, but I'll throw in the link so people can have a look at it. I will post it in my Facebook later. Let's see, where am I here? In the chat. There's the chat. Just a second here. I'll put it in the chat. There you go. And it's about this invisibility shield that the Canadian outfit has supposedly invented. Well, not supposedly, they've invented it. How effective it is, how far it gets, I'm not sure. But it basically is designed to so you can hide various things like military equipment if you were the military, or basically hide yourself, I suppose, if you wanted to hide from something. And you can have a look at it there. It might be fun for people that are into that kind of thing. And if I can get it onto a site that doesn't have copyright, then I'll try to show it maybe next week, and maybe we can talk about it.
Rick, you make me laughing, and I thank you for this, because I remember when Mr. Keshe saying with cup of life, no, you making the cup of life with amino acid and gas. You are enter inside of this box. If you match to atmospheric condition of Earth, nobody seeing. You are invisible for the other because you are matching with the environment.
Exactly. Well, this is what this screen does basically. It's like a shield that's able to bend the light around the object that it's shielding. And it's a very interesting concept. They're talking about using it for spaceships, for cloaking a spaceship. And maybe that's what they already use to cloak spaceships. As you notice, we're not seeing too many UFOs these days that are well, I actually ran into somebody in a lineup. I talked about this about, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. And the guy had seen a UFO locally here, and he saw it, and then it suddenly disappeared. I said, "You mean it just took off at high speeds like?" He said, "No, it just disappeared like someone had forgotten to turn the cloaking button on, and they went, whoops, we're visible. Oh, get the button on." And they went invisible and disappeared. So I thought that was interesting. It was one of those triangle shaped UFO vehicles that are talked about. And he didn't even know the name of it. And I think I knew the name at the time. It was the military type. What is it? I forget what it's TRB 31 or something like that. And he didn't know anything about any crafts or anything. He just happened to see this over the city, this huge craft suddenly appear and then just start to move away and then suddenly disappear. And that was right over the military base, the Navy base that we have in Western Canada. So I thought that was an interesting story, and to find just in the lineup. Anyway, going to wrap things for today, unless there's any other final comments. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending today at the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. And it's been fun going through some of these previous things, and if anybody can think of things to add to that list of various kids' toys and tools and teaching implements, teaching toys, or teaching tools, that's a good way to put it, then let me know, or come into the next workshop and let's talk about it. Let's try to get the list fleshed out, and I'll put together some kind of PDF or a video or something as a guide to start the ball rolling, so to speak, on the various ways that we can learn about this technology in a fun and educational way. Alrighty, I'll end with our little thing that Flint's put together as usual. If I can find it here. The opener, so-called opener. I'm having trouble finding it. Where is it here? Oh, there it is. And I'll have to share that. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time around, and same time and place. And be sure to take in the Knowledge Seekers Workshop coming up on Thursday at 9 a.m. Central European Time, which is check the times because there's weird interchanges with the daylight savings time and not, and between the some countries of the world and the Central European time. So check your local time and make sure you're on time for that workshop. Okay, I'll just play the final video and we'll see you later. Okay, I'll give that to you again because I apparently didn't share the sound, I noticed. All right, we'll try it one more time.